My latest short film took under a month start to finish, although having a very long runtime and still working narratively and visually. Today, I want to take you through the unique process of my making of the short film, the Soccourai, the Server, and the Scorekeeper. If you haven't seen the film, the basic idea is all about justice versus peace, and while I got that conveyed in the script first try, it took me about a day to write, and the character designs went through many more iterations. For most characters, I went through a lot of different ideas in my sketchbook. You'll see on the first page that there's a character wearing cleats and shin guards. That's because the Soccourai was originally a mix of soccer and samurai, and the idea of the short film would have been a samurai who fights for the honor of soccer, and it would have been this comedy thing where he fights against football for which is the better sport. But I quickly scrapped that idea, but some of the elements, specifically in the titles of characters and locations, still remain in the final short. But once I found character designs that I was happy with, I opened Krita and designed the full characters in a lineup with tighter design and color. And all of that took around 2 days, maybe 1.5, and then it was time for me to start the backgrounds. While normally I would storyboard first, on this project my goal was not to have the best animation, but to have a visual presence that made an impact, so I needed good backgrounds to get that done. The backgrounds on this project are very bright, though I think the colors still feel a bit unsaturated in areas and a bit flat, so it is something I have to work on when I get to parts 2 and 3. Yeah, this is only part 1 of the story, so stay tuned to the channel to hear more about the second and third part of this story, because I'm really excited to tell it. I have a lot of good ideas, but I'm working on another short film first, and then I will get to those two. For most projects up to this point, my storyboards have been very close to thumbnails since I'm working on my own, and this short's no different. I don't need to share the boards with anyone, so I just need to understand myself. I just did the most necessary elements to tell a story, not going as far as making beats, but I just left out a lot of movements to make the boarding go by a lot faster. I will say, boarding the background was being done at the same time. I would make a few backgrounds, the storyboards, and those scenes to be made. But in the middle of this process, I decided to work on one scene of the animation. To really help me get a feel of the project, I decided to animate the first scene of the animation, which is the exposition. The scene took me exactly 1 day to animate and was a lot of fun. Since the scene had this mythical nature, I didn't need to have perfectly fluid animation, not even animate my elements, but I did need to animate other things. The falling balls, for example, and the rising pillars that interact wasn't the hardest thing to draw, but it's something I'm not used to animating, so it was a bit more of a mental challenge and actually something hard to draw. The most fun of this scene, though, was animating Martina. It should have been hard, but 6 months or so ago, I did this random character test animation for fun, and the movement of that character is very similar to Martina, so I didn't need to problem solve for this because I already knew how to do it. After finishing this scene, I was on the 5th day of the project, and in 1.5 days, I had both backgrounds and storyboards done. Now, I could really begin animating on the project. I decided to animate the scenes not in plain order, unlike how I'd always done it. This is mainly because all the scenes in the Scorekeeper's castle are very technical scenes, and I thought it would be better to start with a flashback since they are a lot more simple. Plus, they are in the middle of the film, so their slightly lesser quality is more forgivable than if they were at the beginning or the end. On the first and second day of animation, in between actually animating, I recorded all the character lines in English. I'm pretty happy with how robust the voices are in this project, especially compared to my previous short of SPIs, where a lot of the characters still didn't sound great, but I still have a lot to improve, but it works. After the main opener to the flashbacks, I was just breezing through, finishing 1 or 2 scenes a day. But my biggest discovery of the project was by far the OpenToon's lip syncing feature. I animated in OpenToons, and for a while I've noticed that there's a lip sync feature, and after my absolute failure of lip syncing in SPIs, I knew I wanted to master this feature. Since the first time I tried manually lip syncing in SPIs, it took me a full week, and then I just cheated by hiding the faces of the characters for the rest of the animation, and I didn't want to do that this time. So basically, you just draw 10 mouth expressions based on the normal mouth sheets, and if you draw in the right order as the program wants you to, when you import an audio track to OpenTunes and click a button, a few seconds later, you have an amazing lip sync of the audio. You need to download some application called Rhubarb for it to work, and the setup looks a bit difficult, but if you just watch a tutorial and spend about 20 minutes or so, do it because it saved me days, and it looks amazing. Another thing I did differently with this animation in the project that I normally don't do is the coloring as I go. Not necessarily every new drawing, but every few I did go back to the color frames and then keep animating. That's what I used to do. But this time, coloring was done at the end of each scene, like how most normal people do it. This saved me a lot of time, but I never had known the pain of coloring for half an hour straight until this project. 2 or 3 times as well. I didn't even take any breaks because I wanted to film the whole coloring sessions, at least for the final 2 scenes. So that was very painful, but it paid off time-wise at least. Another thing I did for this project, which I feel very dumb for not doing before, was installing the drivers for my tablet. For this project, I wanted more dynamic lines for my characters, so I was looking up why my drawing tablet wasn't drawing with pen sensitivity. Turns out, since I never installed drivers on my PC, it never drew weighted lines. So yeah, go install your drivers if you haven't. The weighted lines make my animation look so much better than it ever has, just by that one simple change, even if I didn't improve technically at all, which I did, but just that makes it look so much better. One final thing I experimented with was the scene called Enter the Throne Room. The scene is just a 3-minute conversation, so to break that up, I wanted the Soccourai to be moving a lot, so I experimented with drawing pose to pose. I would go through the audio, find the emotional beats, draw a frame there, then keep going, and then later just go and animate the in-betweens. But since there was such big gaps in between, it looked really weird. But I definitely do want to start animating more pose-to-pose going forward because I found it a lot faster than just animating frame by frame and seeing how it goes. And when I get it right, it will probably be so much smoother than what I am doing right now. And the crazy thing was, I finished the animation on the 18th day of the project, finishing all the animation in only 2 weeks. But I wouldn't be done with the short for another week and a half. The first reason was because with the project I started to experiment with using the OpenToon's effects features, which made everything a lot cooler, but for some reason, in the final scene, the rain lasted for some 500 frames, but it took over a day to export, and that's crazy. And I needed to stop 75% of the way in because exporting just gets exponentially longer, so after a day it's probably going to take another 4 days for that last 25% to get done. And just for context, normally 500 frames takes me about 30 seconds to a minute to export, so that's a lot longer. So how I fixed it, I just exported the rain and the animation separately, which was a tad bit faster, but that tad bit without the exponential part made it a lot better in the long run. But I'm still very confused by this because the other times I used particle effects in this project, it didn't take nearly as long. And the Thursday a few weeks back where I didn't post anything, it was literally because I could not use my computer at all because this was exporting. But once the weekend arrived, I started on sound design. For the most part, I used a free version of Proto Studio, and then the only other thing I needed for sound was claw size, which I recorded and resampled using sounds of scraping butter knives or more of them clanking and touching. Making music took about 5 to 6 hours. It isn't the best thing in the world. I don't love my score, but it's serviceable, and that's all I can ask until I've learned more music, which I am currently doing. Also, on YouTube, the music is extremely loud in certain scenes, and and I think the reason is my editing software. I think what happened is I wanted my music fade in and out at the beginning and end, or when tracks interacted, while still being quiet in the project, and OpenTunes can do both of those at the same time, so something got messed up, and because of that, it's very frustrating, and it's a lot louder than I wanted to be in a lot of scenes, and I didn't notice till the videos were already uploaded. But now came the most tedious part of the animation. I live in Mexico and most likely go to Mexican art school for animation since CalArts is crazy expensive, and most of my friends speak Spanish, so I always want to make a Spanish dub of the animations with the help of my friends for the voices. This means completely translating the scripts, re-recording the lines in Spanish, and for this project, making a new lip sync. It wasn't exactly a nightmare. My friends are very easy to work with and they did a great job, but the lip syncing wasn't perfect since obviously they didn't speak exactly as fast or slow as in the English version, meaning the animation in some scenes is pretty different, especially the camera moves to hide the fact that it's different. Honestly though, I do think the Spanish dub is better because my friends give such great performances, and I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I love my acting in some of the scenes, and it's all the way so much better than my English. There was so much more emotion, and it's amazing, at least in my opinion.
Solo para acusar a él de traición. Debes
Callarse, mi asesor leal, porque yo sé hablar. ¿Cuáles son mis crímenes que te ha llevado a viajar tanto por una venganza?
Usted se ha prometido a unir el mundo para poner fin a la herejía y discriminación que nos divide, pero estás escogiendo.
Final step is to make the posters. I made a normal poster, then wanted to kill myself for realizing I made the letters by hand and remembered I needed to make a Spanish poster. I also made a 16:9 version of the poster for YouTube, which didn't take up too much more time, and then the project was done and uploaded to YouTube 30 days after coming up with the idea. Oh, and I realized I should have mentioned this project was done during my spring break, which is why I could get all this done. I worked a lot of 7 to 8 hour days on this project. It was crazy. So, final tip, listen to music. A lot of music. I can't tell you how many albums I listened to during that month. If you haven't seen the film yet, here it is, or if you want to learn more about the storytelling side of animation, I made a great video going over the intricacies of romance and cartoons earlier this week, so check that out here.